Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it?
Glad to be here.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into a place that, honestly, most people probably couldn't point to on a map. We're unpacking a massive logistics-first dossier on Kaunas.
Right, which is Lithuania's second city.
Exactly. And our mission today is to figure out if it makes sense for you to actually go there in 2026. We're talking real costs, transport hacks, and a brutally honest look at what's great and what's, well, kind of a letdown.
Yeah, we're covering it all, from backpackers to digital nomads to families.
So I want to ask you, the listener, to do a quick mental exercise with me. Think about the last time you heard someone throw around the phrase like budget capital of Europe.
Oh, that phrase.
Right. Or the last time you saw a glossy travel magazine promising an undiscovered European gem. Usually when we hear those phrases today, there is this immediate, almost Pavlovian expectation of a catch.
Yes, there always is a catch.
You know exactly what I mean. You see the beautiful drone footage, the tourism board promises you this authentic, wallet-friendly experience, and then you actually arrive.
And the reality just shatters the illusion almost instantly.
Yeah.
It's usually a highly curated, manufactured facade.
A complete facade.
Yeah.
You step off the plane, you're dragging your suitcase over the cobblestones, and suddenly you are paying like €8 for an aggressively mediocre cappuccino.
Yep.
You're navigating oceans of selfie sticks just across a public square, and you quickly realize that global inflation and, a flood of viral social media tourism got to this undiscovered gem about 3 years before you did.
It's exhausting.
It really is. We all want to believe in the fairy tale of the cheap, untouched European city, but the reality on the ground is usually just a hyper-commercialized theme park.
Right, it's the absolute definition of tourism board spin. I mean, cities learn to market their historical aesthetic while entirely abandoning the local, grounded economy that made them interesting in the first place. They basically hollow themselves out to cater entirely to transient, short-term visitors.
But then you step into this one specific city in the Baltics, and suddenly that whole bait-and-switch machine is it's totally absent.
Yeah, it really is.
We are looking at a destination landscape that operates on hard, unvarnished cost realities. It's a city that does not pretend to be something it's not. It doesn't have the infrastructure for mass tourist illusion, and frankly, it doesn't seem to care.
It's remarkably grounded. And because it operates without that layer of performative tourism, it becomes a completely different type of travel experience.
So if you are completely burned out and being treated like a walking ATM on your vacations, today is for you. We are heading to Kaunas.
Kaunas, Lithuania.
We're talking about a place with a 14th century old town, a functioning river port situated right on the banks of the Nemunas River, and an aesthetic that tells the complicated story of 20th century Europe.
We're going to examine the actual underlying mechanisms of the city, not just the highlights, but the real economics of it.
Exactly. And the context surrounding Kaunas heading into 2026 is just incredibly revealing.
It is. If we look at the data, flight searches into Kaunas are up 59% year on year.
59%.
Yeah, it's a massive, undeniable spike in interest. And yet, despite that surge, most travelers driving those searches don't even know that Kaunas was actually designated as the European Capital of Culture back in 2022.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it has this secret pedigree that most people are completely blind to.
It's so true. They just see a cheap flight on a low-cost carrier and think, sure, why not? But what we're going to explore today is why the travelers who actually understand Kaunas leave absolutely raving about it, while the travelers who don't understand it leave completely baffled.
It demands a certain level of historical and economic literacy from its visitors to truly appreciate what it offers.
So let's build that literacy right now. Let's start with the macro view and a real 2026 reality check. Because the biggest piece of news, like the crucial update for anyone mapping out their budget this year, is a tax change.
Right, the VAT.
Yeah, on January 1st, 2026, Lithuania instituted a value-added tax hike on hotel accommodations. The rate went from 9% up to 12%.
And whenever a traveler hears the phrase tax hike, the immediate psychological response is just panic.
Oh, totally.
They assume the golden era of the destination is over. But we need to look at the macroeconomic mechanism here. I mean, why do emerging EU destinations eventually have to raise these specific taxes?
Right.
For over a decade, Lithuania has quietly been one of the most affordable corners of the entire European Union. But as a destination gains traction, as you see those flight searches jump by nearly 60%, the local government faces a critical juncture.
Things start breaking down.
Exactly. More tourists mean more wear and tear on roads, more strain on public transit, more demand for sanitation in the historical center. The municipality recognizes the absolute necessity to formalize and capture more revenue from that influx.
Just to maintain the city for the people who actually live there.
Right. It's a classic, unavoidable sign of an emerging market maturing.
I understand the theory, I do. But as a traveler, I am protective of my wallet. I mean, I think of Kaunas like that brilliant indie band that hasn't sold out yet. If searches are up 59% and they're actively tweaking the VAT, I have to ask, are we catching the very tail end of the golden era here? Is the discount window slamming shut?
That is the most important question to ask. But this is where the underlying math of Kaunas provides a profound sense of relief. Because despite this 12% VAT hike, Kaunas remains exactly 21% cheaper than the capital city, Vilnius.
Wait, hold on. Exactly 21%.
Across the board. When you aggregate the cost of accommodation, dining, public transport, and historical attractions, that 21% discount holds incredibly steady.
That is wild.
And that gap is the key metric. The 12% tax hike doesn't actually ruin the budget math for you. Think about the practical application. A 3 percentage point increase on a hotel room that only costs 50 euros to begin with.
That's just an extra $1.50 a night.
Exactly. It's a negligible rounding error for the individual traveler, but multiplied across hundreds of thousands of visitor nights, it provides meaningful capital for the city's infrastructure.
Okay, that makes complete sense. When you frame it as a $1.50, the panic definitely subsides. To put some hard, everyday numbers to that 21% gap, a serious boots-on-the-ground Kaunas trip is going to run you about 40 to 60 euros per day for your total out-of-pocket budget.
Right.
Compare that to 55 to 80 euros for the exact same style of travel in Vilnius. That is the reality of being a second city. I mean, Kaunas is home to about 300,000 people. It has size, it has scale, but it doesn't have capital city inflation.
And part of the reason it feels so distinct from Vilnius is its architecture.
Oh, yeah. The central interwar modernist architecture here is actually on the UNESCO tentative list.
We really need to pause on that architecture because you cannot understand Kaunas without understanding why it looks the way it does. It possesses this utterly unique provisional capital architecture.
Provisional capital. Explain that, because usually a city is either a capital or it isn't.
It requires a brief step back into the chaotic aftermath of World War I. In 1920, through a complex series of geopolitical maneuvers and conflicts, the historical capital of Lithuania, Vilnius, was essentially annexed and occupied by Poland.
Oh, wow. So the country just suddenly lost its capital city.
Exactly. Imagine the panic. The newly independent Lithuanian state suddenly had no administrative center. So they had to rapidly retreat and designate Kaunas, which at the time was essentially a muddy, provincial, heavily fortified Russian imperial garrison town, as the temporary or provisional capital of the country.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It was. What does it mean for a secondary city to suddenly become a capital overnight? It means an explosion of administrative and diplomatic needs. You suddenly need buildings for the Ministry of Finance, you need foreign embassies, you need modern housing for diplomats, university professors, government officials.
So they had to build an entire capital city from scratch, basically in a panic.
Precisely. But here's the critical detail. They were building this from scratch in the 1920s and 1930s. So instead of the heavy, ornate 19th century styles or the Gothic medieval styles you see in other European old towns.
They went modern.
Yes. The sudden, frantic building boom in Kaunas coincided perfectly with the global rise of modernism, Bauhaus, and Art Deco. They hired young, ambitious Lithuanian architects who had studied in Paris, Berlin, and Rome and unleashed them on the city.
That is incredible context. So when you're walking through the center of Kaunas today, you aren't just looking at random old buildings. You are walking through this incredibly cohesive, frozen-in-time collection of interwar modernist ambition.
It shapes the entire physical layout of the central core. It feels intentional, sweeping, geometric, and uniquely optimistic in its design. It was a nation trying to prove its modernity to the world through concrete and glass.
It makes me think of the city as this architectural time capsule that was sealed just before World War II. But knowing all this and seeing those flight searches spike, I'm still nervous about that 21% discount window.
Well, the structural realities of Kaunas suggest that the window will stay open for quite some time. Because it is a second city, it doesn't serve as the primary international hub for foreign investment or mass corporate relocation in the way a capital does.
Right.
That naturally insulates the local real estate and hospitality markets. Prices will inevitably creep up. I mean, that is the nature of global economics. But that 21% differential with Vilnius is structurally protected by the city's secondary status.
Okay, if the value window is still open, we need to talk about exactly when you should climb through it, because timing a trip to the Baltics is not like timing a trip to Spain.
Not at all.
Latitude dictates absolutely everything in this part of the world. So let's break down the calendar month by month. We'll start with the sweet spots, late May to June.
The absolute best time.
This is when the city is just perfection. Hotel rates are sitting around 60 to 75 euros a night. The temperatures are a really pleasant 18 to 22 degrees Celsius.
Which is roughly 65 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit for our American listener.
Exactly. Not too hot, not cold, just crisp, beautiful weather. Laisveza Aloja, which is the massive main pedestrian boulevard, is totally alive with people walking and dining outside. And all the riverside cafes along the Nemunas River are open and buzzing.
It's a great vibe.
Then you have the second sweet spot on the other side of summer, mid-September to early October. Rates drop back down to about 55 euros a night. Temps are 12 to 18 degrees Celsius. You get these gorgeous autumn colors in the city parks, and the museums are wonderfully quiet.
Those two windows represent the absolute peak return on investment for the traveler who wants the perfect balance of comfort, outdoor culture, and value.
But then we have the actual peak season, July and August. This is when everyone in Europe goes on holiday. Rates go up to 75 to 95 euros a night. Temperatures hit 23 to 27 degrees Celsius, so it's genuinely warm.
Right.
And in early July, you have the biggest event of the year, the Kaunas Hanseatic Days, which is this massive medieval festival that just floods the old town with activity, crafts, and historical reenactments. But our sources make a very important distinction here. Even at its absolute most frantic peak in July, Kaunas is still not crowded by Western European standards.
That is a crucial point. The lack of overwhelming, suffocating crowds during the peak summer season is one of the city's greatest assets. You aren't going to be shoulder to shoulder fighting for breathing room like you are in Florence, Venice, or Barcelona.
You can actually walk.
You can still get a table at a restaurant. You can still walk down the street at your own pace.
We also have the shoulder season, which is April to early May. You're looking at 45 to 55 euros a night, but the temperatures are a brisk 8 to 15 degrees Celsius. The outdoor patios are literally just starting to drag their chairs out of storage.
Yeah, it's pretty chilly.
But then we have to talk about the hard season.
The deep freeze.
Mid-October through March. This is where the reality of the latitude really hits you. November to February, temperatures hover between -5 and +3 degrees Celsius. January routinely hits -10.
Wow.
And it's not just the cold. You only get about 7 hours of daylight. The riverside culture essentially ceases to exist.
It is a profound environmental shift.
It is. But hotel rates bottom out at an incredible 38 euros a night.
Which is practically free.
So if we look at the math, from the 38 euro low in January to the 75 or 95 peak in July, we're looking at a price variance of roughly 100%.
Let's unpack the economics of that 100% low to peak price variance, because to an economist, that is actually a sign of incredible stability.
Wait, I have to challenge you on that. A 100% jump in price from winter to summer feels like a massive swing to me. How is doubling the price considered stable?
I know it sounds drastic until you compare it to the alternatives in the European travel market. If you look at Mediterranean destinations, places in the Greek islands, southern Italy, the Spanish coast, their price variance from January to August can easily be 300 to 400%.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's true.
A coastal hotel room that they practically give away for 50 euros in the dead of winter becomes 250 or 300 in August. The fact that Kaunas only swings 100% tells us a vital story about its underlying economy. It has a functioning year-round domestic and business ecosystem.
Because actual people live there.
Exactly. It is a real city where people work, study, and live. It is not solely reliant on 3 months of summer tourism to survive the year. That baseline economic stability is exactly what makes it a reliable budget capital for you, regardless of when you visit.
I see the economic logic, I really do. But as a traveler, I look at that 38 euro January price tag, and I see a total trap. I call it the January trap.
The January trap, I like that.
Because it looks like an absolute steal on paper, 38 euros for a nice hotel, Until you are physically standing outside at 3 p.m., the sun is already setting, it's minus 10 degrees, the wind is coming off the river, and you literally cannot feel your face. You are miserable.
It's an intense experience.
So I have to push back here. If a listener absolutely must travel in the hard season, maybe that's their only time off work, or they found a 15-euro flight, is it actually worth it? Or are they just paying to be miserable? How do they prepare mentally for that?
I completely understand the hesitation, but I would argue that visiting the Baltics in deep winter offers a sociological experience you simply cannot get in July. But it absolutely requires a complete and total shift in expectations.
Like what?
You are no longer going for long, leisurely, romantic strolls along the riverbanks. You are engaging in the survival culture of the North.
Survival culture.
Yes. You do what the locals have done for centuries. You build your day around indoor sanctuaries. You engage heavily in the cafe culture. You spend 3 hours inside the exceptional art museums instead of rushing through them. You retreat to the underground brew pubs.
Sounds cozy, actually.
It is. You eat heavy, warm, caloric food. You have to actively embrace the concept of coziness, the warmth of a fireplace in a medieval cellar while the wind howls outside. If you fight the Baltic winter and try to treat your trip like a breezy summer city break, you will be deeply miserable, just as you said.
Right.
But if you accept the rhythm of the cold, the city possesses a very stark, quiet, almost cinematic beauty in January.
All right, I will concede that there's a romance to hiding in a medieval cellar from a blizzard. Just dress warmly, people. Seriously, invest in good socks.
Good thermal socks.
Now let's talk about actually getting there, the logistics of arrival, and those crucial first impressions. Arrival options are robust. You can fly direct via Ryanair from roughly 30 different European cities. We are talking major hubs: London Luton, Dublin, Milan, Berlin, Eindhoven, Malaga, Stockholm, Copenhagen.
That's a lot of connectivity for a second city.
It is. Round-trip fares are as low as 55 euros in the off-peak months and cap out around 180 in the summer peak. The airport itself is located about 14 kilometers outside the city center.
And the transport logistics from the airport into the city are refreshingly straightforward.
They really are. You don't need a complicated train pass. You can take the 29G bus, which takes exactly 30 minutes and costs exactly €1. It's brilliant.
Well, euro.
Or if you have luggage, you can take a local taxi for about 15 to 20 euros, or use the Bolt Rideshare app, which is ubiquitous in the Baltics, for about 11 to 14 euros. There's also an alternative route. You can fly into the capital, Vilnius, which naturally has more long-haul connections, and then simply take the train over to Kaunas.
That's super easy, too.
Yeah, it is an 80-minute ride, costs just 7 euros, runs hourly, and the trains are modern and very comfortable. Or you can take a regional bus from Vilnius for between 5 and 7 euros.
But once you arrive, regardless of whether you step off a plane or a train, you are immediately hit with a very specific, undeniable sensory profile. And what is most fascinating to observe here is the phenomenon of what we call Baltic light.
Yes. The sources describe the light in Kaunas as cooler, grayer, and higher angled than most of Europe. I want to dig into this because we rarely think about how the literal sun affects our travel experience.
It is a critical element of environmental psychology. This raises an important question. I mean, why does latitude completely change the aesthetic and emotional feel of a city? Because Kaunas is situated so far north on a similar latitude to Denmark or southern Sweden, the sun travels at a significantly lower arc across the sky for much of the year compared to, say, Italy or Spain.
Right, so the light isn't punching straight down from above.
Exactly. It comes in at a slant. It creates these long, dramatic shadows, even at midday, and the light itself is filtered through more atmosphere, giving it a cooler, almost silvery quality. It entirely lacks the golden, saturated hyper-warmth you associate with the Tuscan sunset.
It sounds incredibly cinematic, like the city is permanently lit for a moody indie film.
It is profoundly cinematic, and this specific light heavily influenced the local artists and architects we talked about earlier. When you are designing modernist buildings or painting landscapes, knowing they will be viewed in that silvery, diffuse light, you use different textures.
That makes total sense.
You rely on sharp geometric contrasts rather than ornate details that would just get lost in the shadows. It gives the city a slightly melancholic but deeply atmospheric feel. Combine that visual aesthetic with the relatively low density of the traffic, the smell of fresh bread ovens and coffee roasters in the morning cold, and the distinct scent of pine wood smoke drifting from riverside grills in the evening. It creates an incredibly powerful, specific sense of place.
And that sense of place doesn't hit you all at once. According to the research, it evolves over what is called the 24-hour psychological arc. I'm obsessed with this concept. Let me break it down.
Please do.
Hour 1. You arrive, you check into your room, you walk out onto the street, and honestly, the city feels small, maybe a little too quiet.
Yeah, you wonder where everyone is.
Hour 6. You've been walking around, and that interwar modernist architecture we spent so much time discussing finally clicks in your brain. You stop seeing old concrete and start seeing the cohesive 1930s ambition.
Right.
Hour 24. You've slept, you've had a few incredible meals, you've paid a few bills, and the price-to-quality ratio hooks you completely. You look at your bank app and realize you're getting away with something spectacular.
That psychological arc is incredibly common for second cities all over the world. They rarely overwhelm you with immediate, jaw-dropping spectacle in the first 60 minutes the way Paris or Rome does. They require patience. They require you to settle into their specific rhythm before they reveal their value.
Yeah. And settling into that rhythm means understanding the physical layout. There are 4 main geographic zones you need to know to navigate Kaunas effectively.
Let's map it out.
First, you have the Old Town. This is the 14th century core, situated right at the confluence of the 2 rivers, anchored by the town hall square. It is cobblestones, medieval churches, and the best area for pure historical character and aimless walking.
Very classic Europe.
Then, immediately adjacent, you have the New Town. And the New Town is essentially defined by one massive feature, which is Lisva's Aluja.
Which translates to Liberty Boulevard.
Yeah.
It is a massive 1.6-kilometer fully pedestrianized street lined with linden trees.
Right. And it takes about 25 minutes to walk its entire length at a steady pace. It seamlessly connects the modern edge of the New Town directly into the medieval Old Town. Think about what that actually means for your legs and your brain.
It's a trip through time.
It really is. You start walking at one end, maybe you've just come out of a glass-fronted modern cafe. As you walk, the buildings shift. You see the geometric swooping lines of 1930s Art Deco. Another 10 minutes, you're looking at 19th century Imperial Russian facades. Another 10 minutes, the pavement turns to cobblestone, the streets narrow, and suddenly you are standing in a 14th century Hanseatic merchant square. A single 25-minute stroll down Lisva's Aluja isn't just a walk, it is a literal chronological descent straight backward through European history.
It perfectly illustrates the historical duality of the city. You are physically walking the timeline of Lithuanian independence, occupation, and medieval prominence.
It is brilliant urban planning. Then we have the third zone, Ryanair Kaunas. This translates to the Green Hill. It is exactly what it sounds like, the hilltop district overlooking the center. You reach it by riding this beautifully preserved funicular railway built in 1931.
I love a good funicular.
The neighborhood is quiet, highly residential, filled with wooden houses, offers incredible sweeping views of the city, and is about a 15-minute walk back down the hill to the main boulevard. Finally, there's the fourth zone, Anihai.
The trendy spot.
This is located further along the Nemunas riverside, and it is the rapidly emerging creative district. It's defined by old military barracks being converted into cheap apartments, cool independent cafes, and murals. It is essentially the future of the city's youth culture.
Now that we have the physical geography mapped out, we have to figure out where you're actually going to sleep. And, crucially, how much it's going to cost you.
Okay, let's climb the accommodation ladder. We will start at the bottom with the pure backpackers. If you are solo, you can stay at a highly rated hostel like the Monk's Bunk for just 15 to 22 euros for a dorm bed during the shoulder season.
That's incredibly cheap.
If you want a bit more privacy, the Apple Economy Hotel offers basic private rooms starting at 28 euros. If you are a backpacker couple pooling your money, a totally realistic expectation is 35 to 45 euros a night for a clean, secure, centrally located private room.
I want to emphasize that securing a private room for 2 people for 40 euros is exceptionally competitive for the European Union in 2026. In Western Europe, that barely covers a single dorm bed.
It really is staggering, moving one rung up the ladder to the Midrange Couple. You have a fascinating split in options here. On one hand, you have the Gurdas Hotel in the Old Town. This is a meticulously restored 16th to 18th century building with exposed brick vaults, running 70 to 95 euros a night.
Okay, lots of character.
On the main boulevard, you have the Kaunas City Hotel for similar pricing, or a reliable Ibis for 65 to 85 euros. But then on the other hand, there's the Moxie Kaunas Center, which is a brand new, ultra-modern, neon-lit Marriott property running 75 to 105 euros.
Notice the options available at that specific mid-range price level.
I do, and I want to challenge you on this because travelers fight about this all the time. You've got the Moxie offering total modern convenience, flawless high-speed Wi-Fi, smart TVs, new plumbing, a trendy lobby versus the Daugirdas with its 18th century bones, creaky floors, and historical charm. Which one of those actually gives you a better sense of place when you travel? Are you losing the authentic Kaunas experience if you stay at a modern Moxie?
That is a brilliant question, and it depends entirely on how you define authenticity in 2026. The Moxie represents the modern, outward-looking Kaunas, the dynamic, tech-forward city that currently hosts international digital nomads and progressive Baltic business. That is a very real part of the city's identity today.
That's a good point.
The Daugirdas, conversely, roots you in the deep, historical reality of the 14th century mercantile core. The fact that both of these vastly different experiences exist, operate successfully, and compete at the exact same €85 price point is a massive testament to the health and diversity of the mid-range market here. You aren't forced into a mold.
That is a very fair point. Modern Kaunas is just as authentic as medieval Kaunas. Let's look at families. If you are bringing kids, the Kaunas Hotel right on the main boulevard offers massive family suites for €100 to €140 a night, which includes a great breakfast buffet and access to a small indoor pool.
Kids love a pool.
Always. The Victoria Hotel offers similar amenities, or if you need a kitchen to cook for picky eaters, you can rent an entire apartment in the Angiai district that comfortably sleeps 4 people for about €80 a night.
And finally, we must examine the luxury tier, because analyzing the top of a city's market tells us a huge amount about the economic soul of the destination.
Right. And this is going to shock people. The absolute ceiling of luxury in Kaunas is the Radisson Hotel. It has the best panoramic city views, a full spa, and the highest rated breakfast spread in the city. And to stay at this absolute pinnacle of Kaunas luxury, it costs €140 to €220 a night.
That's it.
That is the hard cap. You cannot spend more money on a hotel room in this city if you tried.
What is fascinating here is the sociological implication of that luxury ceiling. I want to introduce a concept. Think of this €220 ceiling as a protective glass ceiling against hyper-gentrification. In cities like Paris, London, or even nearby capitals like Vilnius or Riga, the top of the accommodation market is 600, 800, maybe well over €1,000 a night.
Oh, easily.
They have massive 5-star international brands. Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton catering specifically to ultra-wealthy tourists, foreign dignitaries, and celebrities.
And when those brands move in, the whole neighborhood changes. The local bakery becomes a boutique selling €400 sunglasses.
Exactly. The local ecosystem is ripped up to serve the billionaire class. The fact that the absolute top of the market in Kaunas is a 4-star Radisson at €220 speaks volumes. It tells you immediately that this city does not possess the infrastructure to cater to ultra-wealthy international tourists.
Right.
And because it doesn't cater to them, they don't come. Instead, the city's demographic remains local business people, regional Baltic tourism, and value-focused international travelers. This glass ceiling keeps the entire city's economy grounded in reality. It protects the €1.30 beer.
It's incredible. The lack of luxury is the exact mechanism that preserves the value for everyone else. Now, speaking of that €1.30 beer, let's talk about the best part of any trip, the food. We need to do a culinary deep dive, understand the history of what we are eating, and reveal the absolute ultimate value hack in Lithuania.
The cuisine in this region is deeply, inextricably tied to the geography, the soil, and the harsh climate we discussed earlier.
And let's be honest, it is hearty. Unapologetically hearty. If you are expecting light, leafy Mediterranean salads, you are in the wrong country.
The wrong country.
Lithuanian food is much heavier than most of Western Europe expects. The absolute, undisputed national dish is called Cepelinai. These are massive, zeppelin-shaped potato dumplings stuffed with heavily seasoned minced pork, boiled, and then served with a very generous, unapologetic pouring of sour cream and crispy bacon bits.
They are magnificent.
A proper backstreet portion of 2 massive Cepelinai is going to cost you about €7 to €9.
If we look at the heavy potato and pork nature of this specific cuisine, it is a direct reflection of historical, harsh agricultural winters. When you are a 19th century farmer dealing with those minus 10-degree January days, you need immense caloric density to survive.
You need fuel.
You need root vegetables like potatoes and beets that can be stored in root cellars through the long freeze. You need preserved, salted, and smoked meats. The food you are eating today is essentially historical survival fuel that has been culturally refined into modern comfort food.
Comfort food is definitely the right word, but the portion sizes are genuinely intimidating. Let me tell you, a plate of Cepelinai isn't just lunch, it's a structural engineering marvel. You look at the density of these dumplings and you realize you are eating bricks of pure energy. I mean, you eat a plate of that at 1 p.m. and you are structurally sound for the rest of the day. You won't need to eat again until tomorrow.
It is remarkably efficient fueling.
But it's not all heavy winter food. If you visit in the summer sweet spots, the staple shifts to altibarucciai. This is an incredibly vibrant, almost neon pink cold beetroot soup, usually made with kefir, cucumbers, and dill, served with a hard-boiled egg and a side of hot potatoes.
It's so photogenic.
It is refreshing, bizarrely beautiful to look at, and costs about €4 to €5. You also have kugelis, which is a rich baked potato pudding layered with bacon for €6. And then you have kibenai, which are these savory half-moon pastries filled with meat or vegetables, and they are only €2 each.
And we must explain the origin of those Cubanai, because it tells a fascinating story of Lithuanian history. They're not originally Lithuanian. They reflect the Karaite heritage in the region.
I saw that in the research, but I need you to explain it. Who are the Karaites, and why are their pastries a staple in Lithuania?
The Karaites are a small, Turkic-speaking ethnic and religious group originally from the Crimea. Back in the late 14th century, the Grand Duke of Lithuania, Pietus the Great, brought several hundred Karaite families from Crimea to Lithuania to serve as his elite personal bodyguards and to help defend the castle at Trakai.
Wait, his personal bodyguards?
Yeah. They settled there, maintained their distinct culture, religion, and cuisine for over 600 years, and their signature dish, the Cubanite pastry, slowly integrated into the broader Lithuanian culinary landscape. When you eat a €2 Cubanite, you are tasting a 600-year-old multicultural military alliance.
That is mind-blowing. The history is baked right into the pastry crust. So, where are we actually going to eat all of this history? We have some specific spots. For traditional, unapologetic Lithuanian food, Berneli Užeiga on Valančių Street is a consistent winner. Mains are around €15.
Great spot.
If you want something more robust, like game meat venison, wild boar, you go to Midrange Couple, which translates to the Hunter's Inn, where mains run €16 to €20. For something highly modern and refined, there is Uoksas, offering a contemporary Baltic tasting menu for about €45 per person. And for casual, lively craft beer, there is a brew pub right on the main boulevard called Aveli's.
Oh, in the basement, right.
Yeah, they brew their own beer in the basement. Pints are €3, and genuinely good pub mains are €12.
Those restaurant prices are excellent. But to truly understand the budget of a destination, we also have to look at the grocery economy. This is vital for the backpackers, the digital nomads, and families renting apartments.
Absolutely. Let's do a mental walk through the local supermarket. The main grocery chains are Maxima, which has 3 massive central branches, Rimi, which is positioned as slightly more premium, and Iki, which has smaller convenience stores everywhere. The 2026 real-world prices are amazing to see.
Give us the breakdown.
You walk down the beverage aisle, a half-liter of local Avituri's beer is €1.30. You go to the deli counter, a kilo of high-quality hard Lithuanian cheese is €9. The bakery, a fresh, dense loaf of dark rye bread is €1.50. The produce section, a full kilo of potatoes for attempting your own engineering marvels at home is just 80 cents. And then the liquor aisle, a 750 milliliter bottle of highly traditional, potent Lithuanian mead honey wine is €12.
It is a highly localized, affordable agricultural economy. But the real centerpiece of the culinary budget, the thing that changes the math for every traveler, is the cultural institution known as the lunch special.
Yes. The ultimate value hack. It is called Dienos Pietus. It translates simply to daily lunch. It is a special menu offered by almost every mid-range restaurant in the city, strictly between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. on weekdays. You walk in, ask for the Dienos Pietus, and you get a full 2-course meal, usually a soup and a solid meat and potatoes main course, plus a coffee or a drink, all for an astonishing €7 to €9.
And we must emphasize the deep cultural significance of Dienos Pietus. It is crucial to understand that this is not a tacky tourist discount designed to lure gullible foreigners in the door during quiet hours. It is a fundamental working-class institution.
Right.
It is designed specifically for local office workers, shop staff, and manual laborers to leave their jobs and have a hot, substantial, dignified meal in the middle of the working day without breaking the bank. When you sit down and order it, you are not utilizing a tourist coupon. You are actively participating in the daily, authentic rhythm of the city.
I love that perspective. A few quick etiquette notes before we pay the bill. Tipping is generally 10% in restaurants, and despite the tech-forward nature of the city, you should always try to leave it in physical cash so it goes straight to the server. You should learn to say achu, pronounced achu, which means thank you. And whatever you do, please avoid the tourist trap restaurants situated directly on Vilnius Street in the Old Town.
Yeah, that's a classic mistake.
If you just walk 2 streets back, away from the main pedestrian flow, the prices drop by 30% instantly, and the food gets substantially better because they are cooking for locals, not one-time visitors.
Okay, we have covered the flights, the hotels, the transport, and the food. Let's synthesize all of these costs. What do the actual daily out-of-pocket budgets look like for our different traveler profiles?
We have mapped out 4 specific out-of-pocket budget blueprints. First, the low budget, designed for the backpacker. You are looking at exactly 38 euros a day. That breaks down to 17 euros for a hostel bed, 12 euros for food, assuming you strictly use that Dienos PHE's lunch special hack we just talked about, and buy some groceries, 2 euros for public transport, 4 euros for museum entries, and 3 euros for miscellaneous stuff like a coffee.
Being able to travel comfortably in a safe European Union city for under 40 euros a day in 2026 is practically unheard of.
It is a superpower. Next is the mid-budget for our mid-range couple. This comes out to 75 euros per person per day. That's 35 euros for your half of a really nice hotel room, 20 euros for food, 5 euros for transport, 8 euros for attractions, and 7 euros miscellaneous.
That's incredibly reasonable.
Honestly, I have to marvel Swiss mid-range budget. For 75 euros a day, you aren't sacrificing anything. You aren't eating instant ramen in a cramped hostel kitchen. You are eating wild boar, drinking local craft beer, riding the funicular, and sleeping in 18th century restored brick hotels. You are living beautifully.
It represents the absolute sweet spot of value intersecting with genuine comfort.
Then we have the high budget for the luxury traveler. This tops out at 195 euros per person per day. That's 110 for accommodation, putting you in a suite at that top Radisson tier we mentioned, 45 for high-end dining, 15 for transport, including private taxis, 15 for attractions, and 10 miscellaneous.
And finally, we have to look at the fastest growing demographic, the digital nomad.
Yes, the long-term stay. The data shows you can live in Kaunas year-round for a baseline of 1,200 euros a month. That budget covers 650 for a modern, long-stay, one-bedroom apartment, 250 for groceries, 50 for transport, 100 for a dedicated co-working space and high-speed Wi-Fi, and 150 for your social life.
Plus, the visa situation is great.
Yeah, from a legal standpoint, if you hold a passport from the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, or the US, you are granted EU visa-free entry for up to 90 days out of any 180-day period. You can just show up and plug in.
We really need to emphasize how rare it is to find a genuinely viable EU digital nomad base for $1,200 a month. In this city, you are getting world-class, high-speed internet, strict European Union safety and food standards, excellent healthcare infrastructure, and a highly functioning, walkable city, all for the price of renting a single damp bedroom in a shared house in London, Dublin, or Amsterdam. It's an extraordinary geographic arbitrage opportunity.
It is incredible. But before everyone listening immediately pauses the show to book a one-way flight, we have to talk about the pitfalls. Because travel is never perfect, and there are 3 very specific, highly damaging logistics traps that people fall into when visiting Kaunas.
These are the traps where a simple lack of research really costs people, both financially and experientially.
Trap number 1, the Vilnius day trip fallacy. The mechanism behind this trap is that almost all major legacy guidebooks list Kaunas merely as a suggested day trip from the capital, Vilnius. So, well-meaning tourists follow the book. They take the morning train, arrive in Kaunas at 10 a.m., spend 2 hours looking at the old town square, eat lunch, walk up the boulevard, and leave on the 5 p.m. train feeling like they've done the city.
And by doing that, they completely miss the soul of the city.
Exactly. They miss the 3 main art and history museums because they don't have time. They miss the Pažaislys Monastery on the edge of town. They don't have time to ride the funicular up the hill. And they totally miss the emerging creative district of Anešai. The fix is so simple, but it requires ignoring the guidebook. Base yourself in Kaunas for a minimum of 3 nights and use it as your central hub to do day trips out to places like the Trakai Island Castle or the monastery.
If we deconstruct the psychology of major travel publishers, we understand exactly why this trap exists. I mean, why do major guidebooks constantly relegate complex second-tier cities to a tiny day trip sidebar? Because they are economically incentivized to cater to checklist tourists, not deep travelers.
Oh, that makes sense.
They assume their reader has exactly 5 days in a country, wants to see the capital, take a photo of the most famous church, and move on. They are optimizing their books for breadth, not depth. But Kaunas is a city that strictly requires depth to appreciate.
That is a brilliant teardown of the guidebook industry. Stop checking boxes, people. Trap number 2, the January weather collapse. We debated this earlier. You see a cheap €15 Ryanair flight and a €38 hotel, and you think you have outsmarted the global travel system.
That you haven't.
But then you arrive, it's minus 10 degrees, the wind is howling, the sun sets at 4 p.m., and half the outdoor attractions are miserable to navigate. The fix. If winter is literally your only option to travel, push it back to late February or March. The cold is still present, but the daylight has returned, and you might catch the Užigavais festival, a traditional Baltic winter festival with masks and pancakes, which really brings the city alive. Or just have some patience and wait for September and October to get the budget prices paired with actually pleasant weather.
And the final trap is an immediate visceral one that hits you the second you land.
Trap number 3, the airport transport bill. You land late at night, you are tired, you walk out of the terminal, and you just hop into the first taxi sitting at the official rank. That driver knows you are a tourist, and he is going to charge you 25 to 40 euros for a 14-kilometer ride that should cost 12. The fix is incredibly easy. The Kaunas airport has free Wi-Fi right in the arrivals hall. Connect to it, install the Bolt app if you don't already have it, and hail a ride for a flat, guaranteed 11 to 14 euros. Or just take the 29G bus for a single euro, which runs dependably until 11 p.m.
It is such a simple technological fix, but falling for that taxi scam completely ruins the 24-hour psychological arc we discussed earlier. It poisons hour 1.
Oh, absolutely it does. You realize you have just blown 3 days worth of lunch money on a basic 14-kilometer cab ride. You feel cheated, naive, and defensive before you have even seen a single piece of modernist architecture. It puts you in a terrible mood. Now, speaking of avoiding bad situations, let's talk about safety and comfort. What are the actual risks of traveling to Kaunas in 2026?
The risk profile of Kaunas is actually quite deeply ironic when compared to major European hubs.
I'll say, according to the data, risk number 1 in 2026 is winter pavement ice. Because the violent crime and petty theft rates are so incredibly low, the single biggest statistical danger to your physical safety is slipping on a frozen sidewalk and hurting your ankle between December and February. You absolutely need sensible, grippy winter boots. Risk number 2 is cycling in Newtown traffic. The city has great separated bike paths by the river, but mixing with cars in the central grid is tough and intimidating.
Yeah, skip the bike in the center.
And risk number 3 is getting a terrible exchange rate at the airport or bus station currency kiosks. They routinely offer 15 to 25% worse rates than a standard bank. The fix. Just use a regular bank ATM to pull out your euros.
This specific risk profile is the ultimate hallmark of a high-trust society. When the local authorities' primary safety warnings to tourists are about weather-related slipping hazards and mathematically poor forex rates, rather than aggressive pickpockets, bag snatchers, or violent crime, you know you are operating in a deeply secure environment. It's not Rome, it's not Paris, it is not Barcelona. You do not need to wear your backpack on your front like a shield. You do not need a money belt.
I love that so much. Be aware of ICE and a 15% currency markup. If the absolute worst thing that happens to you on vacation is you slip on some ice or get a slightly bad rate on 50 euros, you are doing incredibly well. Because of this high-trust environment, the rating for solo female travel is exceptionally strong. It is safe to walk at night, the culture is generally reserved and respectful, and dining alone is perfectly normal and common.
There's one minor thing to note, though.
Right. The only minor caveat the sources mention is to avoid isolated, unlit stretches of the riverside parks after midnight. But they specifically clarify this is because of rowdy, drunk teenagers hanging out, not predatory, targeted crime.
And for families traveling with children, the rating is also excellent.
Yes. You have totally pedestrianized streets so kids can run ahead safely. You have the funicular railway, which is basically a giant toy train for a toddler. You have the local zoo. The health infrastructure is also top-notch. Kaunas is home to the country's largest teaching hospital. And I need to explain something for our UK and EU listeners. If you have a medical emergency, you are fully covered by your GHIC or EI cards.
That is a crucial detail. The global health insurance card for Brits and the European health insurance card for EU citizens means you receive state-provided health care at the exact same cost as a local resident, which is often free.
It is a massive safety net. Also, regarding the language barrier, essentially anyone under the age of 40 speaks completely fluent English. The older generations, especially outside the central tourist zones, might only speak Lithuanian and Russian, but a smile and a translation app go a long way.
Which naturally brings us to the actual subjective experience on the ground. Beyond the costs and the logistics, what are the actual emotional highlights and what are the honest disappointments?
Right. Let's get to the soul of the trip. What is the absolute best moment you can have in Kaunas? According to our deep dive of traveler reports, it is standing at the top of the Kaunas Castle ruins at 9 p.m. in late June. You are looking down, watching the Nemunas and Neris rivers physically merge together right below you. The medieval old town is spread out behind you. The sky is that silvery, long-lasting Baltic twilight, and there are absolutely no other tourists around. You have an entire European castle to yourself.
That is the exact moment the city justifies the flight.
Other authentic, undeniably great hits include the Pietus Monastery. This is a sprawling 17th century Italian Baroque complex situated on a peninsula on the eastern edge of the city. The architecture is stunning. It feels like it was airlifted out of Florence and dropped into a northern pine forest, and the entry fee is only €4, which honestly feels like they forgot to add a zero to the ticket price.
Ooh, euros is crazy.
Then there is the M.K. Urlionis National Museum of Art, dedicated to Lithuania's greatest symbolist, artist, and composer. There is the Anashai Riverside for grabbing a craft beer at the Kultura Bar and having an incredible industrial chic dinner at a place like Nomad. And then there's the Ninth Fort.
The Ninth Fort requires serious discussion. It is a massive concrete fortification on the edge of the city that was used as a site of mass execution during the Nazi occupation and a transit prison for deportations to the gulags during the Soviet occupation.
It is an incredibly heavy, sobering memorial. You walk through these cold, damp, concrete cells, and you see the massive, brutalist monument erected on the site. It is emotionally exhausting.
But we need to look at the contrast between those sites to understand the region. You have the serene architectural perfection of the Pachaislis Monastery, representing faith and art. And then you have the heavy, unimaginable emotional weight of the Ninth Fort Memorial, representing the absolute darkest chapters of the 20th century. You need the stark contrast of both to truly begin to understand Lithuanian history. It is a country that has built and preserved incredible beauty, but has also endured immense repeated historical trauma. You cannot just consume the cheap beer and the pretty buildings without acknowledging the blood in the soil.
Yeah. We need to sit with that for a second, because you are right. To travel responsibly means to witness the full spectrum of a place, the dark as well as the light. Okay. Transitioning to something much lighter, what about the things you can skip? The overhyped stuff. The sources consistently point to the Devil's Museum. It is a museum filled entirely with thousands of carved wooden statues of devils. Kids apparently love it, but it has an €8 entry fee, and the consensus is that it tires very quickly.
I have to question the appeal here. It sounds so quirky, so weird, so perfect for an ironic Instagram post. But you're saying the novelty wears off before you even hit the gift shop.
Precisely. It is a curiosity, not a masterpiece. Once you have seen 50 carved wooden devils of varying sizes, you have essentially grasped the premise. Seeing 3,000 more does not deepen the experience. The same logic applies to the famous Hill of Crosses. It is a visually striking pilgrimage site, but it is located 90 minutes north of the city. Renting a car or taking a series of buses to dedicate a whole day to see it is generally considered not worth the logistical effort if your primary base is Kaunas. And the biggest honest disappointment of the city, the nightlife. It is thin. The city closes early. There is definitely some youthful energy on Thursdays and Fridays at the student bars near the local university. But if you are coming to the Baltics expecting the massive multi-story club variety of a place like Riga or Tallinn, you're going to be severely disappointed.
Which naturally leads us to the ultimate question for any traveler planning a trip to this region. How does Kaunas actually compare to those famous alternatives?
Let's do a direct head-to-head comparison. Alternative number 1, Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania. It is only 80 minutes away by train. The pros of choosing Vilnius: has way more restaurant variety, a much livelier nightlife scene, a massive UNESCO World Heritage Old Town, better international flight connections, and the famous Uhupis district.
We should clarify what Uhupis is for the listener. It is a neighborhood in Vilnius that declared itself an independent artist republic, complete with its own constitution, which includes rules like a dog has the right to be a dog. It is a bohemian haven.
It sounds amazing. But
Yeah.
the cons of Vilnius, as we established at the very beginning, it is exactly 21% more expensive than Kaunas, period.
The dynamic here is clear. Vilnius is the classic first-timers destination. It is built for the weekend party crowd, the luxury hotel seeker, or someone who just wants to check off a major European capital. Kaunas is for the second-timers. It is for the modernist architecture nerds, the history buffs, and the strict budget purists.
Alternative number 2, Riga, the capital of Latvia to the north. It is a 3-hour bus ride from Kaunas and costs about 20 euros to get there. Pros of Riga. It feels like a much, much bigger city. It has an incredible, sprawling Art Nouveau quarter, a proper waterfront, and a very strong, aggressive nightlife scene. Cons. Riga runs 30 to 40% more expensive than Kaunas on basic hotels and dining.
This comparison is a perfect textbook example of second city syndrome. Think of the dynamic between Porto and Lisbon in Portugal or Osaka and Tokyo in Japan. The capital city Riga, Vilnius, Lisbon gets the massive international corporate money, the political polish, and the inevitable inflation. The second city Kaunas, Porto, Osaka, retains the working-class grit, the hyperlocal culture, and the vital affordability. Kaunas fully embraces its second-tier status, which actually acts as a shield, protecting it from the Disneyfication and homogenization we see in so many European capitals today.
So I ask you, the listener, to make the call. Do you want polished, big, and expensive like Riga? Or do you want slightly gritty, deeply authentic, and cheap like Kaunas? To help you make that final decision, let's bring all of our data together into the Is It Worth It matrix.
Let's deliver the final definitive verdicts based on our specific traveler profiles.
Profile 1, the backpacker. The verdict is a massive yes. At 38 euros a day, with 55 euro flights and the absolute genius of the Dienos Pietus lunch act, this is without question one of the top value destinations remaining in the entire European Union. Profile 2, the Midrange Couple. Again, yes. 75 euros a day buys you stays in 18th century character hotels, 16 euro wild boar dinners, and zero financial stress. The new 12% VAT hike barely even moves the math for you.
And what is the verdict for families?
For families, it's a yes, but with conditions. It is a fantastic destination if your kids are slightly older, able to walk a few miles a day, and will enjoy riding the funicular and visiting the zoo. But you have to be realistic. It is not a sandy beach destination, and it's not a theme park destination. If you have screaming toddlers who need constant high-energy entertainment, there are better places in Europe for you. Now, for the luxury traveler, the verdict is a hard, undeniable NO. The ceiling is 220 euros a night. There are no 5-star international brands, no Michelin-starred tasting menus, no VIP velvet ropes. If you want pure, unadulterated luxury, skip Kaunas and go to Vilnius instead.
And I must reiterate that NO for luxury travelers is the absolute secret to the city's ongoing success. By not possessing the infrastructure to offer ultra-luxury, Kaunas keeps its real estate and hospitality prices grounded. It doesn't trigger the aggressive real estate speculation and hyper-gentrification that luxury global brands bring with them. It creates a beautiful, self-sustaining loop of immense value for the middle and lower tiers.
It is poetic, really. The beauty of the NO for the ultra-rich is exactly why the backpacker and the digital nomad can thrive here. Oh, and speaking of digital nomads, their final verdict is a resounding yes. To be able to live in a safe, vibrant European city for 1,200 euros a month with world-class digital infrastructure makes it a top-tier base for remote work.
It is a fascinating, perfectly balanced economic ecosystem.
It really is. So let's wrap up this massive download of information. We have navigated the macroeconomics of the new VAT hikes. We have warned you in stark terms about the frozen January weather traps. We have painted a picture of the quiet beauty of the merging rivers at 9 p.m. And we have paid our deep caloric respects to the structural engineering glory of the musty potato dumpling.
We have covered the logistics from the moment you step out of the airport to the moment you leave.
So I want to ask you directly, listener, which traveler are you in this matrix? Are you booking the 3-night stay in a brick-vaulted 18th century hotel for a quiet weekend of history and culture? Or are you packing your laptop to set up shop for a month as a digital nomad in the emerging Shanghai district?
As you make that decision, I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative question to ponder. We have established today that the unique charm of Kaunas lies precisely in its lack of commercial polish, its strict cost realities, and its total absence of international luxury brands. But if flight searches keep rising by 59% every single year, what happens next? By intentionally seeking out an untouched, authentic budget capital to appreciate its grit and its cheap beer, do we, as budget travelers, inadvertently become the very catalyst that eventually destroys the city's affordability? It is the great paradox of modern travel, and it is something to mull over the next time you find yourself sipping a €1.30 local craft beer by the banks of the Nemanus River.
A heavy philosophical thought to go with a very heavy meal. If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day. That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.